All right, let's get cooking. Welcome to the latest edition of Chin Check Sports Radio. I'm your host, JD. I want to thank you all for taking the time out to join us. And as always, we welcome any suggestions, feedback, comments, and criticisms, which improves the quality of our program, which ultimately improves your listening experience. Before we get started, we want to send you all our well wishes during the current pandemic of COVID-19. We know that it's a very trying time, and as we stay on Chin Check Radio, I know it is the uncertainty that fuels our anxiety, but I think the best thing that we can do is continue to follow the proper protocols about washing our hands, practicing social distancing, wearing our masks out in public, and continue to do our part to slow the spread of this virus while the powers that be continue to work on a cure and a vaccine. And honestly, as we stated, we don't want them to rush on it. And if we can serve as a distraction with everything that's going on, that is something that we are proud of, and we will continue to do so. Secondly, I really want to send a heartfelt thanks to all of you who take the time out to listen to what we have to say. And it seems that every other day somebody is reaching out to us, telling us that they like what we do, they enjoy our program, they like the content, they like the passion in which we speak. So it's something that we're proud of. This is something that we enjoy doing. And all we wanted to do at Chin Check Radio is to just share our opinions with you all. And you all can agree with what we're saying, can disagree with what we're saying, not like what we're saying, or think it's total BS. That's fine. We enjoy doing this, and this is something that we will continue to do for as long as we're able to. We're already 75 videos in, and we're getting better each and every broadcast. We're getting better each and every time, and we always look for ways to improve our program. We try to come up with quality topics that people will listen to, and we get a lot of positive feedback. So that's something. Please keep the feedback coming, and we thank you. We thank you for your tremendous support. It has meant the world to us, and we're going to continue to keep doing what we're doing. On this broadcast, I wanted to pay respect and show the proper respect to Daniel DC Cormier. Now, this man was the former UFC light heavyweight champion, former UFC heavyweight champion, and I give this man all the credit in the world. Even though we are mostly a boxing program as well as a program for the Dallas Cowboys and other contemporary issues of sports, but we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about this great champion, what he meant in the world of mixed martial arts. He is one of the greatest of all time. It should be in any discussion of the greatest of all time. And I'm not talking about light heavyweight. I mean mixed martial arts fighter. And we're going to break down his resume. And what's ironic about Daniel Cormier, I still think he is actually rather underrated compared to other great fighters. I don't think he gets enough credit. I don't think he gets enough due for all what he has accomplished in the tough world of mixed martial arts. But we're definitely going to break down this man's career. We're true fans of him, and we spoke about him before on a previous broadcast, but we wanted to dedicate an entire broadcast to this great champion. Now, as a wrestler, Daniel Cormier was a very accomplished wrestler, an Olympic level wrestler. When I first noticed him was when he beat a guy by the name of Damian Hahn. Now, coming out of my home state of New Jersey, for my Jersey folks listening, Damian Hahn is considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest wrestler to come out of the state of New Jersey. That's how dominant this guy was. And the guy was a terror. I believe he went to Lakeland High School, I believe, and I could be wrong. Somebody please correct me. And definitely just tore through the ranks of New Jersey wrestling. This guy was the truth. And when I saw, of course, you follow people's career, you kind of want to see how they're doing. And to see him lose to a Daniel Cormier, okay, if this guy's the greatest wrestler that probably ever came out of Jersey, then who is this guy who actually beat him? So that's something that I always kept my eye on him for that. So Daniel Cormier first got my eyes and really got exposure in the mixed martial arts world fighting for Strikeforce. Some of you younger fans don't even remember Strikeforce, but they clearly were an alternative to the UFC. Now, the first fight or notable fight of Daniel Cormier's career was when he fought Jeff Monson in June of 2011. Now, Jeff Monson is a former ADCC winner. Now, for those of you who don't know, it is Abu Dhabi. It's a combat submission tournament that they have, you guessed it, in Abu Dhabi. And it's something that they invite all the greatest grapplers in the world to compete at this tournament. And it's very rare for Americans to win, and Jeff Monson won it. And definitely considered one of the greatest grappling heavyweights of all time. And in the grappling circuit, he is truly considered, especially in the submission grappling circuit, he is truly considered definitely a legend. He even once fought for the UFC heavyweight title against former champion Tim Sylvia. So Daniel Cormier defeats him by unanimous decision in 3 rounds, June of 2011. Next fight, September of 2001. KO in the first round against Antonio Bigfoot Silva. Now, I have to put this in a perspective for you all. The previous fight, before he fought Cormier, Antonio Bigfoot Silva had just beaten Fedor, the last Emperor, Emelianenko. Now, in Fedor's previous fight before that, lost to Fabricio Verdun via a triangle choke. Fedor hadn't lost in over a decade. So Fedor, at the time, was generally considered probably the greatest mixed martial arts fighter of all time. A decade of dominance in the Pride organization in Japan. Beat a who's who. And so loses to Verdun. That sends shockwaves in the mixed martial arts world. But for your hardcore mixed martial arts fans, you know when it comes to grappling and BJJ, anything can happen. Anybody can get submitted. When I've trained, I've been submitted. I've submitted people who I didn't think I was going to submit. Those things happen. So I think even though it sends shockwaves, the fact that it's somebody who hadn't lost in 10 years, there was an understanding in the world of mixed martial arts. Submissions happen. The next fight after Verdun did Fedor fight Antonio Silva, and that was really the first fight that Fedor was really beaten up physically. They had to stop the fight. I mean, he looked awful. He was beaten up and was beaten up bad. Next fight after that, Silva is knocked out in 1 round by Daniel Cormier. So kind of really building this guy's wrestling. Next fight, May of 2012. He defeats Josh Barnett, the babyface assassin, former UFC heavyweight champion, and a Strikeforce Grand Prix tournament final. Now, Josh Barnett, along with Frank Mir, are considered 2 of the best grappling, and I'll probably say Minotauro Nogueira, but 2 of some of the best grappling heavyweights champions of all time. Josh Barnett once defeated Randy Couture for the UFC heavyweight championship, but was stripped due to a failed drug test. Josh Barnett, great catch wrestler, trained under Eric Paulson, numerous gold medals all over the place. So Josh Barnett is a truth in terms of grappling, and Daniel Cormier beats him by unanimous decision in 5 rounds. His first fight in the UFC is against the aforementioned Frank Mir. Frank Mir, former UFC heavyweight champion himself, BJJ black belt. So April of 2013, Frank Mir loses to Daniel Cormier by unanimous decision on the undercard of the Vincent Henderson versus Gilbert Melendez fight. That was actually one of the great fights I've seen up to that time. And I definitely missed the UFC on Fox. That's a personal note. The next fight, October 2013, he defeats Roy Big Country Nelson by unanimous decision, by 3-round unanimous decision. Now, for those of you who don't know who Big Country Nelson is, go back and look at the Tough Enough, I believe in 2009, 2010, the Tough Enough heavyweight, I can say tournament or the reality show, the Ultimate Fighter. I'm sorry, not Tough Enough, that's WWE, the Ultimate Fighter on Spike TV. Now, that show featured heavyweights that was coached by former UFC light heavyweight champion of the world, Quentin Rampage Jackson, former UFC light heavyweight champion of the world, Rashad Evans. They both coached a team of heavyweights. What was notable about that show was in the very first episode, the late Kimbo Slice of the internet street fighting sensation or fame, former Strikeforce fighter, eventually UFC fighter, then eventually professional boxer, came onto the show as the last entrant, was picked by Quentin Jackson, Roy Nelson was on Rashad Evans' team, and their fight, and I'm going to say it was week 3, week 4, their fight, and I believe till this day, it's still the highest rated show in The Ultimate Fighter. Because you have Roy Big Country Nelson, who gained a lot of fame being part of the Shamrock International Fight League, where you had these UFC greats, Ken Shamrock, Frank Shamrock, Pat Miletich was coaching different teams. Roy Nelson was on one of those teams, but obviously that became defunct. So Roy Nelson, with that experience, plus him being a black belt in BJJ, versus Kimbo Slice and his experience, well, street fighting experience as well as a little bit experience in Strikeforce. Definitely the highest rated show. He beats Kimbo Slice using the crucifix, held Kimbo down, starts landing strikes. The referee Herb Neal stops him. Roy Nelson went to knock out, I believe, Brandon Shaw to actually win that series of The Ultimate Fighter. So Roy Nelson, former International Fight League champion, former the Ultimate Fighter winner, and is beaten by Daniel Cormier in October of 2013 by unanimous decision. Another pretty much easy fight. Now, after that is when Daniel Cormier moves down to the light heavyweight division. Now, put this in perspective. Daniel Cormier only stands about 5'9", let's say 5'10", at the most 5'11", and you're fighting these bigger guys, the Frank Mirs and the Josh Barnetts and the Bigfoot Silvers, who are standing 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" in height. So clearly giving up a size advantage to some of these bigger guys. At the time, his friend Cain Velasquez, who was a heavyweight champion of the world, the two of them were actually training partners and good buddies at the American Kickboxing Academy out there on the West Coast. So of course, Cormier, not wanting to jeopardize or to ruin any friendship with one Cain Velasquez, moves down to light heavyweight division, and his first fight knocks out Patrick Cummins in February of 2014 in the first round. Next fight after that, he defeats the great Dan Henderson May of 2014 by technical submission and rear naked choke. Now, for those of you who don't know how great Dan Henderson is or was the former Pride middleweight and light heavyweight champion, holds victories over Vanderlei Silva, Fedor Emelianenko, beat him up in one fight, Shogun Rua. So Dan Henderson is another Hall of Famer in the world of mixed martial arts, and Daniel Cormier proceeded to pick him up in the air, body slam him like he was old luggage, and clearly dominated that fight. Now that fight set up the grudge match between him and Johnny Bones Jones. Now, there's always was a question of what caused these guys' beef, because these two really did not like one another. They really did. Let's go back to the press conference. They were announcing the fight. They were doing a press conference. The two of them walk on stage together. They butt heads. Daniel Cormier then kind of pushes John Jones kind of in the neck area. John Jones then drops his belt off his right shoulder, proceeds to start throwing punches, and the brouhaha is on. They start fighting on stage. They tear the stage up. You see somebody getting tossed around the stage. I mean, definitely wasn't a good look. That's not the type of promotion that the UFC wanted. At one point, I believe they went on ESPN to do an interview where they were just trashing each other. And at one point, they didn't realize that the cameras were rolling, and they were just literally just insulting one another, taking personal pot shots at each other. And definitely wasn't a good look. And you could tell even by Daniel Cormier, when he found out that the cameras were rolling the whole time, you kind of saw a look of a little bit of slight embarrassment on his face. But these two did not like one another. And it was always a question of what actually caused the beef. Well, if you listen to both guys' story, because Jones states that he made a joke to Cormier by saying, "Hey, you're Daniel Cormier. Hey, I bet I can take you down." Daniel Cormier feels that, well, who was John Jones to say anything to Daniel Cormier, considering that Daniel Cormier once tried out for the Olympics, was once, I guess, an Olympic alternate, but once was able to represent his country in the Olympic Games. So Jones never really got to that grappling level. So I guess while Jones thought he was joking with him, Cormier kind of took it personal. To me, it seems a very petty beef, but hey, I've had pettier beefs before myself, so I understand from a man's perspective. So all that culminated January 3rd, 2015, where Daniel Cormier lost a unanimous decision to Johnny Bones Jones in a great light heavyweight championship fight. It definitely won fight of the night, and definitely rightfully so. I think you had mixed martial arts fans. Either you were going for Jones or you were going for Cormier. I myself was rooting for Jones. I thought Jones would win the fight. And ironically, I was in Dallas, Texas the weekend of that fight because I was going to watch my beloved Dallas Cowboys play the Detroit Lions. And that was that Sunday. And that Saturday was a fight. So I remember going to a sports bar in Dallas, Texas to watch that fight. And when I tell you the place was jumping, the place was jumping. So next fight after that, May of 2015, it was really supposed to be Johnny Jones against Anthony Rumble Johnson, who was knocking everybody out who was walking. Now, Johnny Jones gets arrested the month before April of 2015 on a hit and run, where he hit his woman's vehicle, he takes off running, definitely a bad look. Jones is arrested, stripped of his UFC title. So since Anthony Rumble Johnson was the originally scheduled contender, Daniel Cormier was up. Now this time, I think he's probably the number 2 ranked fighter in the world. The two of them fight for the vacant light heavyweight championship in a great performance. Daniel Cormier, by rear naked choke submission in the 3rd round, he defeats Rumble Johnson to become the UFC light heavyweight champion of the world. Definitely a dream come true. He definitely wanted that belt, and he earned it rightfully so. Next fight after that, a tough split decision victory against Alexander Gustafsson. Now, Alexander Gustafsson gave John Jones his toughest fight of all time, and that's considered probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, light heavyweight championship fight of all time. So Alexander Gustafsson was never, ever a tough out. Next fight, July of 2016, UFC 200. Let me give you a little bit of backstory on that. That was supposed to be possibly one of the greatest, if not the greatest, UFC cards of all time. That fight was supposed to have the returning John Jones, who put his legal troubles behind him, a fighter who actually never lost his championship in the ring. He was stripped of his title due to his own actions, and rightfully so being stripped, versus Daniel Cormier, who won the vacant title. So it was always this question of who is the real light heavyweight champion of the world. And that question was supposed to be answered at UFC 200, July of 2016. The problem was Johnny Bones Jones tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs. And if you go back and watch the video, when Dana White informs Cormier that Jones tested positive, you see Cormier slam his foot on the ground in frustration. You can tell he's clearly agitated. He is saddened. He is shocked. He is telling Dana, no. At one point, he was willing to even sign a waiver to even forget the drug testing. That's how bad he wanted that fight. And of course, Dana White explained to him that Jones couldn't fight. He had been suspended by USADA and all the different sanctioning bodies for failing the drug test. So clearly, it was a disappointment to a lot of fight fans who wanted to see that fight on probably the biggest UFC and the most stacked card of all time. And as a consolation prize, he gets Anderson Silva, the former long-reigning UFC middleweight champion of the world. DC beats Anderson Silva, 3-round unanimous decision in a non-title match. In April of 2017, a rematch, this time a quicker work of Anthony Rumble Johnson, submission in the 2nd round. So Cormier clearly has 2 successful defenses of his UFC light heavyweight title, which brings us to the long-awaited rematch about 2.5 years later against Johnny Bones Jones at UFC 2014. Daniel Cormier is knocked out via a head kick and punches. Jones retains the title, and I remember I thought it was a great performance from Jones. The problem is Jones again tested positive for the steroid metabolite Turinabol. Of course, a lot of backlash behind that. Jones, again, this is somebody who just popped positive on a drug test a year prior, pops again. In Jones's subsequent test, he still has Turinabol in his system. I think very small picograms. How he got out of the punishment, I don't know. but the loss was overturned and Cormier was reinstated as champion. Next fight, January of 2018, he defeats Volkan Ozdemir, an up-and-coming contender. Wins performance of the night, knocks him out in the second round. Now, he relinquishes the light heavyweight championship and moves up to face the UFC heavyweight champion, who is Stipe Miocic. Now, Stipe Miocic is seen as probably the greatest heavyweight champion of all time. The same Stipe who won his title against Fabricio Verdum, I believe in Mexico. I believe he won the title. Has successful title defenses, one even including against hard puncher Francis Ngannou. And both of them were coaches on a UFC, another The Ultimate Fighter series. And of course, whenever you have opposing coaches on that program, they eventually fight in the ring. And in a stunning upset, knockout in the first round, Daniel Cormier becomes the UFC heavyweight champion of the world. So this is somebody who was a UFC light heavyweight champion of the world, gone up in weight to win the UFC heavyweight championship of the world, and only a handful of guys have won multiple titles have won titles in different weight classes. And we're talking the BJ Penns, it very Conor McGregor, it very rarely happens. So that is rare air to be in, and to defeat a fighter of the quality of a Stipe Miocic says a lot, and knocked him out in the first round. In his first title defense in Madison Square Garden, he defeats Derek the Black Beast Lewis, November of 2018, submission rear naked choke, which I told anybody who would listen, he's going to beat Derek Lewis easily, because Derek Lewis, yes, he's big, he's strong, but clearly not on the skill level of a Daniel Cormier. August of 2019, loses the heavyweight championship of the world to Stipe Miocic by TKO in the fourth round. Ironically, I thought that Cormier was actually winning the fight. I like how Stipe changed strategy, but definitely attacking the body, wore him out physically, and eventually scored a knockout. And in what we know as Daniel Cormier's last fight, lost a unanimous decision to Stipe Miocic a year later at UFC 252 in the fight bubble to cap a absolutely wonderful career. Folks, let me say this about Daniel Cormier. He's clearly one of the greatest fighters of all time. Total 26 fights, 22 wins, and only 3 losses. Now, out of those 3 losses, one is to Jon Jones, considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest, mixed martial arts fighter of all time, and 2 to Stipe Miocic, who's considered the greatest heavyweight champion of all time. So, not bad losses. Clearly, you're losing to other all-time great fighters. Now, here's why I say that Daniel Cormier is still rather underrated. I just gave you the list of guys who he beat. ADCC grappling champions, former heavyweight champions, light heavyweight contenders, and everybody. And he gets overlooked because when you think of greatest of all time, people will quick to throw names out. The Hoist Gracies, Jon Jones. They'll throw in Anderson Silva. They'll throw in George St. Pierre. And I agree. They'll throw in Matt Hughes. And I agree with all of it, the Frank Shamrocks. And I definitely agree. But what really separates Cormier, and I spoke about this before, what I love about Cormier, and I'm not saying it doesn't apply to all these guys, but clearly he's a wrestler. He has a background in wrestling. But he was able to improve his striking a whole lot when he's knocking guys out. Had that term they use in mixed martial arts called dirty boxing. And that's that inside, little short hooks and uppercuts on the inside. And definitely did it well. He pretty much fought a fight that was suitable to his body frame, body type, body structure. And definitely packs a punch. Obviously, the wrestling takes care of itself. Being a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he was a good roller. I love the guy. And the thing is, unlike a Jon Jones, who, again, we're talking about talent, Jon Jones has otherworldly talent. Same thing with Anderson Silva. Great fighters, otherworldly talent. But the difference is, with those two, Daniel Cormier never tested positive for any performance of hazard drugs. It's simple as that. He's never tested positive. And I think that's where Cormier should get more appreciation in the greatest fighters of all time discussion, because we're talking about two men, Jones and Silva, who have pop positive for performance-enhancing drugs. Now, I don't think that it had any bearing on each man's dominance, but we have to take everything into consideration. Now, do I think all things being equal, do I think Jones could still be Cormier? Yes, I think styles make fights, and I think Jones just has the style, the height, the reach, and the length to give Cormier some problems. He is not as an accomplished wrestler as a Daniel Cormier, but Jones is good enough. He's that athletic with his trips and his throws and his strikes, where I think just styles make fights. I just don't think that even on a level playing field, all things being equal, I don't think that Cormier could beat Jones, but it doesn't make Cormier any less of a fighter. However, you must take into consideration that DC never tested positive. Never, always clean, always did it the right way, worked his ass off, trained, got better, and when I used to watch a lot of the countdown shows, his common thing was, if I can get just 10% better or 1% better every single day. And he meant that, and you could tell, and you could definitely tell that he meant that. Had the right people, had an excellent camp with him with Cain Velasquez and Khabib, and he brought in a guy who won the gold medal in Athens, Gatsimarov, and if I'm mispronouncing the name, somebody please correct me. So Daniel DC Cormier is leaving behind a wonderful legacy in mixed martial arts. He clearly has a bright future ahead of him in the broadcast world. He definitely made a seamless transition, a flawless transition to broadcasting, to being on the ESPN shows. So I'm very happy for the man. But this is just our respect to Daniel DC Cormier for what he accomplished in the world of mixed martial arts. So to Daniel DC Cormier, brother, thank you for all the memories. Definitely, you fought some classic battles. We love the way you worked hard. You didn't shortchange anything. You literally stretched out and you squeezed out every last drop of talent that you had to give great fights, to reach the highest level, to reach the pinnacle of your sport. So to Daniel DC Cormier, if this is in fact your last fight, we want to say, champ, thank you very much for what you've accomplished. Thank you very much for the memories. And until the next time, this is Chin Check Radio signing off.